Okay, very good morning and good afternoon, probably good evening to some of them in various part of the world. It's nowadays in the virtual world always to say good earth because we don't know in which side of the earth we are all living. The pandemic has connected us globally. So today we have an interesting session, which is one of the highlight of this wonderful conference, international conference on responsible tourism and hospitality, ICRHT 2020, which is a dialogue session. So I am pleased and also it's an honor for me to be the chair for this dialogue session. Myself, Kandapan from Taylor's University, and we have two distinguished speakers today to have a dialogue session with some interesting questions. The first, all the way from Bulgaria, we have Professor Stanislu Ivandiu. We call him Prof. Stan. He's a professor as well as vice rector for research in Varna University of Management, Bulgaria. And he's also an editor for robonomics, robotomics. I think it is a new term probably coined in the recent days, how the robotic, especially in the Industry Revolution 4.0, how the economic can be pushed in the country-wise. And he also does a lot of research in the smart technology and also like how the technology can lift up the economical growth of the country. So we welcome you, sir.
Good morning.
And we have another interesting distinguished speaker from Malaysia, Madam Shireen Azli, who's a board member and also former CEO of Malaysian Health Care Travel Council. During a period of tenure, she has managed to position the Malaysia as one of the top medical tourism hub in the Asia Pacific zone. And she's recently has been engaged in a lot of community roles, and also she is really contributing towards the development of the community in different areas. We welcome you to this dialogue session, madam.
Thank you, Professor. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so I just would like to share my screen. So we can two distinguished speakers. So I would like to open this dialogue session with my first opening question. We all know that COVID pandemic has almost suspended the international travel in the entire world. Borders closed and travel restrictions, social distancing, new norms, and a lot of, I can say it's really an unprecedented situation for last more than 15 to 16 months globally, especially after WHO has announced the global pandemic in the March. So in this perspective, I would like to open the floor to Prof. Stands to address the question, how do we bring tourism back more sustainable and attractive during the post-pandemic?
Thank you so much. This is a fantastic question, and many people are thinking how to make tourism great again, especially after having more than a year of, suspended tourism demand and with very limited travel. What I can say is that we need to open tourism at one point, and so that people can travel again. Of course, this decision will be probably a combination of three things. One is the health concerns. The second, this means that if we open tourism too fast, then the pandemic will be more difficult to contain. The second one is an economic decision, the economic element of the decision, because if we delay the opening of the tourism industry, it may turn out that there is nothing to open at the end because companies will go in default. And the third one, the component that will probably bring balance in the force is the politics. So we need to find we need to find the proper balance between the health concerns, the economic concerns, political decisions, and start to open tourism gradually. An integral part of this one is the vaccinations, because the vaccinations, they address the health concerns, and from there we can move to addressing the economic concerns of the COVID-19. So practically within the next few months, all eyes should be focused on addressing the health issues. The vaccinations, it is a necessary step towards the opening of tourism.
Thank you, Prof. Stein. Ma'am Sherry, would you like to add some perspective from our local context?
Thank you very much, Prof. Ganapan, for having me here, and thank you for the invitation. Good day, everyone, and I hope that you're all safe and well wherever you are. So taking the question that was posed by Professor Ganapan in terms of the how do we bring back tourism if why I will actually compile that in one, actually, about trust, about building trust. The trust of the tourists, the trust of the travelers is very important to be, because at this juncture, how COVID hit us, I think it came from nowhere, and we didn't know how to do it. And after 1.5 years, we are still grappling with the vaccination, etc. So that I think a lot of travelers, even though we are all yearning to be going out on a holiday or traveling for business, we think 10 times maybe to make that trip. So it's all about the trust. So the question is that when you're talking about building that trust, how do we build it? So for me, I'm looking at the 3 areas. The trust comes with the confidence. People can are open to consider us as a destination of choice, for example. So there, when you talk about confidence, you have to look at the safety, you have to look into all the areas around how would I say, the standard operating procedures, making sure everybody is protected. And that's, I think, key in terms of building that trust. That's building confidence. Number 2, we need to look and understand and also track this market trends now. Now we say that this is the new ways of doing things. So a lot of people would say that we are in the new norm of doing things, right? So people, because of that, people change. The market trends change. The demands are changing as well. So what actually drives that demand? What actually would be the key change to the market trends? So we need to understand that, building confidence is not enough, and you need to understand the market, you need to understand the growth drivers and the demand drivers. And the third is about us committing ourselves to build a resilient tourism industry and also a sustainable tourism industry. And I think this is what this conference is all about, the sustainability. So if I can recap what I would say for this question, is that, we have to build the trust, and to do that, we have to build confidence, we have to look into market trends and also the demand of, demand drivers, and we need to look into building resilient and sustainable destinations.
Thank you so much. I think my next question is almost addressed. Gus, yes, I think the continuous rollout of the COVID will have a significant improvement in the travelers' confidence. And of course, it will be a major lifting of the travel restrictions. But as you discussed about the vaccinations, so I would like to know your views on the introduction of the vaccine passports and the IATA vaccination recent tracking device, like tracking apps, developing these things. How really can improvise towards the improvement of the confidence as well as travel? Maybe can I ask Prof. Stan to start?
Yeah, thank you. These applications, they are a fantastic example of how technology can help us in tracking the spread of the pandemic, and also to help us make informed decisions about the reopening of the tourism industry at full scale. So when we talk about all these vaccine passports, vaccination tracking apps, etc., we need to consider that these are practically vaccination certificates. So it's probably naming them a vaccination passport will not be quite an appropriate term, because it will be considered like an ID document that gives more rights for someone. In that sense, these certificates they have to serve information purposes only. For example, if you are vaccinated, or if you had COVID, or if you have a negative PCR test or whatever, this will be this is a requirement for entering the country, and this is the way to contain. So these applications they just help to share the information between whether you have this or not. So you don't carry with you a physical certificate. So however, here we need to make here we need to find the balance between the personal rights of people and the public well-being. Now, if we want to go back to the normal life which we had before the pandemic, if we consider that life to be normal at all, then we need to have many people to be vaccinated, significant share of population to be vaccinated. So we need to stimulate this. But if this application, so this is for the public well-being. On the other hand, we have the personal rights about decision whether to be vaccinated, when to be vaccinated, which vaccines, but also sharing information, because some of this information that is shared is also private with these applications. So, however, this means that we need to put an emphasis, which is more important, the personal rights of individuals or the public well-being. So when we talk about pandemics, or in other extreme situations like war or whatever, probably the most important is the public well-being, because the virus doesn't have nationality, it doesn't choose that person or another person. Practically, it is a common activity. That's why, from this ethical perspective, I personally support the use of these mobile applications that provide this information. But the information there needs to be quite well protected, and it should be to the minimum that is necessary for to facilitate travel, and not to be used for any sort of voluntary or how to say deliberate or undeliberate discrimination.
So, thank you, Prof. I think you have raised an interesting discussion whether this kind of whether vaccine passport should be renamed towards like maybe well-being, public well-being, or probably it should be like, that's an interesting discussion. Like, yeah, I think this kind of app is mainly to track and to monitor and keep the public safe from the red zones. And yes, I think the passport is more on an identity for a long term, where there is the entire history of the travel. But the COVID can be within small region. It doesn't require a airport or probably any mode of inter-border crossing. So I think that's an interesting talk. Maybe I would like to hear something from Ms. Serene. Would you like to add on some points?
Yeah. So I was saying this now. I know that there are some reservations, when it comes to the travelers having to, let's say, reveal their data to a certain level for the vaccine passport. But I think it's the same concept of, having a passport now when we want to travel to all the different countries, different regions. And, certain regions, they require you to have some kind of immunization jabs, for example. So I think if we keep it within, how would I say, that comfort level of each traveler, I think this is going to be a key advantage for tourism and travel as well, because you need to have, we're talking about building that confidence, we're talking about building trust. The trust goes both ways, not only the trust of the travelers going into a destination, it's also the trust of the receiving country, to receive travelers from where all the different destinations. So it needs to work both ways. And I guess we need to find that balance in terms of, giving our data to a certain level so that we can make the travels. I think, let's say, for example, for us the Muslims, you want to go to Mecca or Medina and do our pilgrimage, you need to have certain jabs so that you're protected from certain diseases. So similarly, if you want to make that trip, you need to be willing to do the necessaries. That means if you have to ensure yourself having the vaccine for COVID, then you have to do it, so, and if they recognize a certain type of vaccine, then you have to follow if you want to make that travel. I think for a while, I think perhaps maybe for the next 3-4 years, people will still have to adjust to this, what I call the new norm again. You can't expect us to travel everywhere freely. And also countries and destinations, they also have to adapt to this. And you don't have these requirements, and again, it will travel to the country destination. So it's a win-win thing. Comfortable with it? It's something that people need to be open to vaccine passport or tracking apps for vaccination.
Thank you, ma'am. I think very two different perspectives. One is more towards public health, and I think another one is more on trust. I think looking at the scenario, I think the vaccine passport won't be enough. Even the tracking app is required, because the travel is going to happen not only across border, even within the country. So I think that will be very interesting if the future goes towards probably a way of collaboration. And before the COVID, I remember many airports become smart airports, where even the passports become more like smart passports and everything. So I think there is a way forward. There are a lot of things. So let me move the discussion towards how the policy side. Like most of the countries have realized that tourism is an important source of revenue for the economy, as well as it is one of the important things to position their country in different recognition in the global market. So tourism to recover, the government really, a lot of governments, they develop phased approach, okay, by promoting domestic tourism, because domestic tourism is the key for sustainability. Going local is the key now. There is no choice. And looking at that, travel bubbles with partners and established sub-regional travel bubbles has been introduced in many countries, especially like islands to island travel bubbling, or probably they started looking to country, even like last year Thailand, when they come with the golf quarantine vacation from China, a bubble kind of traveling. So could you share your perspective on this approach? Maybe this time I will start with Ms. Sharin first.
Okay, thank you, Prof. I think for everyone to survive in this industry, other than the fact that the government is giving assistance to the players in the tourism industry, we can't run away from the fact that domestic tourism is the key to start with the survival for now. Having said that, it depends on how things are within that particular country. If there are cases are still climbing and stuff like that, even domestic tourism is not possible. So, but I'm looking at other in the region, in the different countries. Yes, they have allowed, like for example, even though there are still cases in the community, you've allowed certain ways of travel bubble for domestic, where you can minimize the exposure. You have to go to destinations. There are not they reduce the number of tourists coming over, so that means there's no congestion, reduce risk, etc. I'm interested more in terms of how they are restarting international tourism, in these bubbles. And if I can share an experience of Malaysia, one of the bubbles that we have started of opening for international travel was healthcare travel. Medical tourism, because when we look into medical tourism, for example, Malaysia last year not last year, so 2019 pre-COVID, we welcome about 1.4 million patients into Malaysia, getting treatments and everything. And all of a sudden, with COVID, we saw like the more than half of them gone and not being able to travel in 2020, and we expect a lot less this year as well, because we don't foresee the borders opening for the next maybe 6 months to a year, even though with vaccine. But what we have done is that we have formulated a travel bubble that will protect the patients coming in, and also protect the borders from any unnecessary risk. So, with a very strict SOP, and that has worked for things like healthcare travel, where you can actually contain their movements, their exposure, because they go to hospitals directly, they don't meet people and they don't mix with the locals unnecessarily. So maybe identifying those kind of small bubbles will help restart the international tourism, because even though domestic is happening, I mean, in most countries, the main contributor will still be international tourism. And that's, I mean, I know that public health will want us protected, but at the same time, for the economic reason, we need to look at how we can balance that. And I think, for example, Turkey now, they open their international tourists, but they are having lockdown for the locals. They lock down the locals, but they allow international tourists that have full vaccination, for example. So maybe this kind of creative innovative solutions should be deployed more by the different destinations. We need to address, again, looking back, what are the key market trends, the new market trends, what are the new demands, and then use the data and market intelligence to identify what bubble will work in different markets. And I know this is where I think digital technology also will play a big role in terms of restarting this international tourism and opening up these different bubbles, because without innovation, without creativity, and without the data, and not understanding what the market wants, or what's workable for a particular country in terms of containment of COVID-19, for example, without that, it will take a very long time before we even look into international tourism returning. That's what I feel, and we need to be creative and innovative in developing those bubbles.
Okay, I truly agree on the statements, and when you shared about the concept of the Turkey, keeping locals safe at home and opening the borders, I think that probably related to that, there is a question from Robert. Can we take the question, then we move forward, Prof. Stan? Because the question is related to the vaccination. Can I read the question for you? I will read the question for you.
Okay.
The industry is ready to reopen. Of course, our industry is always ready to serve, ready to reopen. We have put in place protocols and systems to protect staffs and tourists. The question is how and when will border reopen? Vaccination is obviously a key component. The target of 80% vaccinated is laudable, but at the current rate, most of the industry will have run out of reserves by the time we reach that point, especially at 80%. So the sustainability at this point is whether we as the industry can survive at all. So I think maybe Prof. Stan would like to address.
Thank you. I would like to thank Robert for this fantastic question. At the beginning, I said that we have to balance, it will be a political question, because the vaccines, they are a necessary component for addressing the health concerns, and also as part of rebuilding trust in the industry, as Shireen already mentioned correctly. But on the other hand, we need to consider the economic aspect, because if borders and the tourism industry remains closed for a long period of time, then at the end of the day, there will be nothing to reopen, because companies will go bankrupt. The question probably, yeah, it is a political question. Practically, the tourism industry can be reopened within one day. The question is whether this can be, what will be the consequences within this, from this decision, and what will be the economic and the social cost that society is ready to bear from such a decision. Probably the only solution is to speed up vaccinations, and to have stimulate the domestic travel and regional travel bubbles with countries with high degree of vaccinations. Of course, the vaccination does not eliminate completely all the health concerns, but decreases the spread, which means it contributes to rebuilding trust and improves the societal well-being. This is a must. So I'm pretty sure that no government will blindly reopen tourism industry, travel, and anything that any industry that was largely closed or with very limited operational capacity currently, without addressing strictly the health concerns, because this will be at a very high social cost, and of course political cost for that government. So this will not work. The only solution will be the vaccination. I would like to connect this question to the previous one regarding the domestic tourism, travel bubbles, international cooperation. Here, which types of tourism and which types of solutions we need to promote depends on the size of the tourism industry and countries' dependence on tourism. I just checked that Malaysia has about 32 million people. So Malaysia is something like 4.5 times larger than Bulgaria. So it is sufficiently large to have significant domestic tourism. Bulgaria is a small country, and its tourism industry is largely based to cater for international tourists. This means that domestic tourism is contributing, is generating overnights and revenue, but they are not sufficient to sustain in the long term the local tourism industry, which was developed before 2020. So for countries like US, France, or Spain, or I suppose Malaysia, China, etc., which are large enough, they can have large tourism demand, domestic tourism demand. They can keep their tourism industry sustained on this domestic tourism demand. But countries like Bulgaria or Greece or Croatia, which are much smaller and which have a significant share of international tourism in the number of overnights and revenues, it is compulsory to create regional bubbles. So, for example, since today or yesterday, Romanian tourists, which contribute a significant share of Bulgaria's revenues, can enter the country without a PCR test. So this is why this is a bilateral agreement, and this is a way to attract Romanian tourists to the Bulgarian Black Sea coast. So this is a pragmatic way to do it. So it's as a way to attract tourists. But this is a political decision based on health data that it is reasonable to do it, and which will have significant economic repercussions. From 1st of July, the European Union will introduce the green certificates. So if you get a vaccine, if you already had COVID, then you will be, with this green certificate, you will be allowed to travel within the European Union, which is also a good way to stimulate and to reopen the tourism industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. I think you have covered almost all different stakeholders' perspective. So, Ma'am Sherin, would you like to add anything, or we move to the next question? We have an interesting question next. Okay, the next question, yes. When you see that UNWTO, they predicted that 2021 there will be a bit increase in the tourism outflow and also travels, but because of the wave 2 and some country wave 3, the international tourism arrival plucked by 87% in Jan 2021 compared to I think 2020 it was around 70, close to 70, 67 to 70 only. So amidst of new outbreaks and tightened travel restrictions, I think the industry is again, because I remember last quarter of 2020, many countries, they applied their resilience skills. They thought being innovative, creative, small zones of opening, travel bubbles within the state to state or maybe within the region, neighboring regions, has started giving a part of revenue. But suddenly because of the new outbreaks, especially recent one in India, and also I think even other countries also slowly getting the new outbreaks. So what are the short terms or probably a long term revival plan from your perspective that will really help the industry to reboot the tourism and also to position a bit strengthen economy country-wise? So can I ask Ma'am Sherin? Because
thank you, Prof. I think, I wish that we have a crystal ball to be able to answer that question, and get it right kind of thing. But in truth, I think it's us trying to, put all the different efforts that we can to how would I say, revive the tourism while protecting the safety of the people of the country as well as the visitors. And I think that's a very delicate balance. And as we can see, many countries who have had a travel bubble, let's say from green countries and stuff like that, they actually froze that, or they reviewed that, they stopped that to a certain level, because then you can, they had the second wave and the third waves and stuff like that. So this is where I mentioned just now that we need to have our vaccine at least 80% of the population to have that herd immunity. And as much as you want to do all these little bubbles, you still have to have that, even the bubbles will need to have the people coming through it who are vaccinated. I mean, that's the reality now. I mean, we can be creative when it comes to having all the different plans, etc. But at the end of the day, unless we manage it, unless we have the people coming in safe from the disease, we are actually risking ourselves. And I think you can fault me for that, because I came from a background of health tourism. And I came from the government as well, under the Ministry of Health Malaysia. So yes, we want to drive tourism, but at what cost? So in the short to medium term, I think we have to be realistic, is that we need to make sure that we have a safe environment in the destination, as well as people coming in are also vaccinated. So that's something that we need to get done fast. I saw there's a question being in the chat room saying that, even that you are vaccinated, that there's a risk of the vaccinated patients still carrying a carrier, and they can still infect others. And that's the reason why we need to make sure that we have that herd immunity, which means that even if I'm vaccinated, but if the people in my traveling group are not vaccinated, then there's a risk. So everyone has to be vaccinated in the short term to start opening up healthily, if I can say, and safely. So in terms of long-term survival, in terms of the initiative that we can take in the short and medium term, while waiting for vaccine to get in place and 80% herd immunity, etc., we can do our work in terms of leveraging in digital technology, for example, and look into, let's say, virtual reality or something like, to keep warm with the target markets, which means that we keep connected to the target markets, so that when the borders are open, when it's safe to travel, they will think of us as the destination of choice, for example. And I think that's something that the players have to do now, given that vaccination is currently ongoing aggressively, so that when let's say end of the year, when we can open our borders, then our potential tourists will remember, okay, we'll choose Malaysia, for example, as a destination. So we need to look at how we can engage, we can leverage digital technology, and we need to understand as well in terms of the business model. I mean, I know that people talk about vaccination all the time, but I think we need to do something in terms of understanding the different business model that we need to move forward with. It's not going to be, for example, I don't think like a cruise cruise holiday will be something that people will jump on board now. Maybe people will start with small groups, private tours, because they want to be feeling safe, they don't want to be exposed. So our business model has to change. You can't go and have people in buses traveling with strangers. You need to look at how we can come up with different business models to attract the different tourists from all over the world to come into our country, for example. So the business model has to change. And in the long term, in order to us to revive and be sustainable, we need to look at how we can collaborate. And we're talking about collaboration not only between the players of the industry, you're talking about policymakers, you're talking about government giving all the assistance needed, the private sector. We need to look into all the partners that's involved. We need even to look at the civil society, because at the end of the day, if we look into long term, it has to be everyone's interest to have a safe and destination for tourism to resume. And for the civil society, for everyone in the society, is important, because you're talking about economy, you're talking about jobs creation, you don't want to lose that job, etc. So I think this is where the business model is not just talking about the business model of gaining revenue, it's about how we do things as well. Collaborations and innovations have to come in place in the long term for us to have that sustainability of the international tourism. And that's what I truly believe. With vaccination, of course.
Maybe I will pass the floor to Prof. Stan with a question connected to this discussion from the inputs from Ma'am Shireen. Yes, I think one of the biggest challenge industry is facing is most of the industry, hotels, everything has closed during last year. But on top of that, how we can all stay connected to our customers. Okay, I think that's even though the hotels is closed, but I think keeping connected, engaging with your customer, it's very important, especially international travels, when you are running an international hotels or even local chains. And customer engagement is always one of the top priority of this service industry. So probably in Prof. Stan's sharing, could you also address how this, during the closure time, how this kind of digitalization also helps us to connect with the customers, especially you come from a very big background of the technology advancements. We would like to hear from you. And there is one question regarding the vaccine, which I will bring it later, Mr. Harrison. Yeah, in the chat. Yes, Prof.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. During the closure, it's very difficult to keep people motivated, to keep connection with the customers. However, of course, as Shirin already correctly mentioned, we need to hoteliers. They need to keep connected with their customers. Of course, not only hoteliers, but all tourist companies, because in order customers to keep these companies in their consideration set, because customers will easily forget these companies after if they don't receive regular information. So what we can have things like newsletters, social media, sharing photos from previous years, to keep the bus, to share information about the destination. So the idea is to keep customers, potential customers, engaged, and to keep the destination, the hotel, within the consideration set. And not to forget, there might be different competitions to be organized with best photo, whatever. Gamification is also possible. But of course, here more important. But this can work until a moment, because you can't keep this for many months or many years when people do not travel, because at one point it will be difficult to share a lot of positive information in order to stimulate the relationship with the customers. So at one point we will need definitely reopening the borders, because I can use this comparison. If you want to fight world hunger, you can't fight the world hunger by posting photos of food on social media. You need to produce and distribute food. That's so if you want to revive tourism, you have to open the borders and let people travel. That's it. Regardless how difficult it would be, regardless whether there will be vaccine passports or whatever we call them, or PCR test or whatever. We need people to travel, because without traveling people, there will be no tourism industry. That's straightforward.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is what we can do.
Since you touched a bit on the last point about that vaccine may not be an only criteria to travel, because there is the related question in the chat from Harrison. Dear profs, about the vaccine passport, WHO is not recommending forcing tourists to have vaccine to enter vaccine passport. The reason is unfair to the countries have less vaccinations. The gap of development will be wider. How you think about this point? I think their question is focused exactly what we are discussing now, like whether the vaccine passport should be mandatory, or probably it is an added advantage for the people to travel. And I think Prof. Stan also covered about the green certifications. I think maybe, yeah, Prof, you can continue. Maybe just add on to that.
This is a fantastic question. Thank you, Harrison. What I can add to what we already discussed, it's that if the vaccination passport is compulsory, then you really put people into unequal situation. So it will be unfair for some, but others may argue that if you have high prices of travel, also puts some people outside of tourism industry, because they cannot travel, they cannot afford to travel. If the vaccination passport includes data not only about the vaccine, but also whether you had COVID, or it can be complemented with a PCR test or something else, then probably it will work best. But I think within the next few months or a year, the vaccination passports, or applications, to put it in a more correct way, to name them in a more correct way, they will be quite required by many countries, and they will be introduced. Most people many people have smartphones, so these these applications, they will be free of charge, downloaded on the mobile application, on the phones. So I don't think that this will create significant issues here. But with the vaccines, it might, but it's difficult to give a definite answer. There are too many pros and cons here.
I think if I can add to that, it's just
Yeah.
too many, there are risks if you don't have that. And that risk is actually not only just for the traveler, but it affects public health. It affects a lot more people. And I think if you're talking about fighting COVID, as much as it may be deemed unfair to certain countries who got vaccines late and stuff like that, I think that's something that we have to adapt. If you want to travel, we need to have people traveling safely and not risking other people. Again, it's too big a risk to not have that implemented.
Yeah, true. That will lead to have another wave in the future, extension of the lockdown. And I think the COVID vaccine, passport vaccine, is a big area. I think we need a whole day to discuss, I think. Probably we will move forward. I think there is another question from Edgar. He was asking, if the borders are open, are we safe to travel just for tourism and economy to be running again? Maybe we will, can I ask any one of you to quickly answer that? If the borders are open, are we safe to travel just for tourism and economy to be running again?
I think for the borders to open, they will have to adhere to certain criteria, right? So one of them is that maybe 80% population vaccinated, we have the herd immunity, so, or at least it's a bubble of travel. So if borders are open, they must have had that requirement, how would I say, evaluated. Like just now, Prof. Ivanov mentioned about Romania and Bulgaria. So they have evaluated that, yes, it can be a political decision, but they have they must have calculated risks and how to manage that. And I think for any borders to open, similarly, that's what's going to happen. Any decision will have to have a risk attached to it, and they must have a risk management methods to be able to handle that. And I guess that means, yes, you're safe to travel if you're vaccinated.
Yeah, proper protocol will be applied.
Yes, with the protocol and everything, yes.
Thank you so much. I think this question opened a lot of discussion. Thanks, Harrison, for the question. We will move forward. And Glaren. Okay, so I just would like to touch a little bit on one of the important part of the industry is the career path, especially the students. There are a lot of students attending, a lot of educators here. So the future of hospitality industry in the wake of COVID-19, how will the future of hospitality outlook will reshape to attract the graduates to choose this particular industry as their career path? Probably I would like to hear from Prof. Then I will pass it to Ma'am Sherry. Prof. Steins?
Yeah, thank you. An excellent question. What we saw is that COVID-19 showed the vulnerability of tourism and hospitality jobs, and probably dissuaded many potential applicants in tourism and hospitality programs to continue to pursue a path in the industry. What I see in Bulgaria is that many people who already work in tourism and hospitality decided to move to another industry rather than work in tourism, because their jobs are vulnerable and they could not work. So this means that in the near future, after the reopening, the tourism and hospitality industry may find itself in a situation when it is already open, when it is already safe to travel, but there are not sufficient people willing to work in the industry. So the demand for labor will surpass the supply of labor in the industry. So what we would probably what the tourism industry would need to do will be to do my favorite thing, to automate all the dirty, dull, dangerous, repetitive tasks that people do not want to implement, like cleaning and carrying items, provision of information, etc. Of course, here we talk about robots, chatbots, self-service kiosks, etc. In that way, this will work directly towards compensating for the jobs that are not filled by graduates, because there are not sufficient people working in the industry. But indirectly, this will help also in motivating the graduates to pursue a path in tourism and hospitality, because the tasks that will remain to be implemented in the tourism and hospitality will require greater skills, digital skills, emotional intelligence, analytical skills, etc. So graduates will see that tourism, it's not only about laundering sheets, about cleaning, about provision of the same repetitive information to tourists, but it's also about analysis. It's about communicating with guests. It's about social interactions. So it is much more than usually what usually the hospitality industry includes. So this is one of the paths. We need to show that tourism industry, it's still fun. It can be a passion. It can provide a long-term career path despite all the hurdles that we see, including this one.
Thank you, Prof.
With the pandemic.
Respecting time, I will pass the next question to. I'll move to the next question to Ms. Sharon. Still, you can add on the previous question. I think when Prof. Stan mentioned about the robotics, I think I remember the recent research going around on the Industry Revolution 5.0, which is a human augmentation, like how a human and technology can harmonize the industry with a very ecosystem, right? So I think that's a very good input from Prof. And yes, I think this is one of my interesting questions I would like to ask the panel. There is a lot of changing natures of work due to this COVID-19 condiment, especially the events become hybrid events, and work from home become a new norm, measuring to the changes and increased probably job opportunity. Of course, there is one side, there is a closure of job, but I think there is the other side, there is a new jobs are opening. There, for example, like the restaurant in, I think in Amsterdam, if I'm not mistaken, Dutch, I think, Netherlands, I think they opened the corona-proof dining space. And I think the McDonald's come with the corona-proof zone, sanitation zones. I think a lot of innovation, even though the pandemic has given a lot of human damage and financial liquidity damage. But the other side, positive side, I think it given the opportunity for the people to think innovative, be resilient. So in that case, I would like to hear from Ms. Sharon, being from the industry, what kind of new skills are required among the graduates to fit into the future industry and to become a successful career?
Thanks, Prof. I think I will go back to my, first answer just now when we're talking about the new ways of doing things. Our graduates, agreeing with Prof. Ivanov, our graduates cannot look into hospitality as what it is now. It's now, the business model is changing altogether. And in a way, we need to look at hospitality and tourism industry as evolving into things that actually leverage on technology, leverage on digital experience, virtual experience. We need to understand the market even more. Like for example, the normal events of attracting tourists that we do normally, you know, all these exhibitions, etc., may not be how we are reaching out to the customers anymore. You know, we need to look at very smart way of doing things for the hospitality and tourism industry. In terms of doing, I would say smart, in a way, smart business. This is why we look into the analytics. We look into the data that's available. We have to understand the market. We have to have, you know, a different way of looking at market intelligence. We need to understand the changing behavior of our tourists now. You know, maybe like, for example, again, going to cruise. Maybe before, people prefer to go into cruise and, you know, just relax for 2 weeks. But now the behavior might be different. People do not want to get into a confined space and, you know, in big numbers anymore. So behaviors are changing, market demands are changing. Demand drivers needs to be understood. What I mean, we need to understand, you know, what drives these demands, you know. So all this are different skills that are needed from the graduates that are looking to be in this industry. You need to look at, you know, how smart that you can be in addressing all these changing behaviors, all the data that's there. You know, yeah, you're talking about industry revolution, you're talking about big data. How can we use them more effectively, smartly, in the new ways of doing business? And I think this is the importance that academia need to adapt to as well. You know, we cannot have the same module of hospitality and tourism that we have now if you want to cater for 3 years down the line. I don't see, you know, the tourism industry being the same anymore post-COVID. Everything is going to change. So if we you know, if we are the one that are doing modules, the curriculum for our degrees, our hospitality and tourism studies, we need to adapt and change fast. Otherwise, our graduates coming up will not be able to adapt themselves, and they won't be agile, and they would not serve what's needed of the industry in the future. So I think let's look into building smart graduates for hospitality and tourism industry.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Sherry. And maybe Prof. Stan would like to add, probably, can I also pass to the next question? I think quite relevant to the education field. What are the challenges that the learners and educators facing during this transformation? And I just would like to highlight there is 2 questions in the chat from JC Chu and Faizan. It's more related to the vaccination passport again. So I would like to say, like, probably the questions, whatever they posted in the chat, we will still continue the engagement in the conference website. I think we have a limited time. We need to end the session in 1 or 2 minutes. Thank you. Thanks for the questions from Merlin and Faizan and Arizona. Okay, yes, Prof. Maybe this is the last question.
Yeah, thank you. The COVID-19 practically transformed universities, and especially for tourism and hospitality, I personally saw 2 main challenges. The first one is to keep the learners motivated to study tourism and hospitality, because when they were seeing all these lockdowns and closures of restaurants, hotels, their prospects for internships and jobs in the industry started to be quite bleak. And so keeping their motivation was one thing. And the second one was about the practical training, for example, for culinary arts, because you can't study culinary arts only by watching videos. Yeah, you can watch the videos at home, but it's not possible. You have to go to the kitchen and do the practical training. So these were the 2 main challenges. But yeah, in the long term, with the full reopening of the universities, I hope that these will be overcome as well.
Thank you. Since I come from the education background, probably I would like to touch a bit on this. Yeah, I totally agree on Prof. Stan's the practical, especially the hospitality, tourism, culinaries, and hands-on, where psychometric skill is kept at the first place. But I remember one of the restaurant who was very innovative, that the customer engagement, the previous question. What they have done, they have sent the ingredients to the customer in individual packs. Then the chef will give live, and he will do the live show along with the customers. Of course, it cannot replace the real physical, but at least I think it can improve a certain level of engagement. And what we have been practicing even in our many universities in the virtual time, practical, especially we ask the students to be innovative even in their house. For example, when the parents or maybe their siblings are cooking, so try to put your hands with them and try to be creative, do the table setup, do the food plating, everything, and send the pictures, and we will give some comments on that. That's a one way. And not only that, the one of the housekeeping, bed making. So what we have also insisted, like, okay, everybody, we are going to have a bed in our house, probably do the bed making, do the different kind of folding, at least the skill what you have learned, at least certain level of hands-on is still in touch with you until you come back to the campus after the everything is lifted up. I think this is the things. And another big challenge in the transformation, not only university, I think even in the industry, especially like many companies, is that when you have a multicultural work group, when they went to in different countries, they stuck in the pandemic, the time zone become a big challenge, especially like students from China, from other parts. For example, when you use one common learning platform, they have a lot of restriction in their own country. I think that is another challenges we do have. I think there are so many challenges we can keep listing out. I think we have come to the end of this dialogue session. I think 1 hour went like a lightning. So I would like to quickly synthesize, not a very detailed one, very quickly. I think that today's the dialogue session especially started off well with Prof. Stans focusing on how the tourism can move forward with the support of political and other aspects, and he brought an interesting discussion about the passport vaccination is a right word to be recognized for the global, or maybe as a, or probably is there other ways, and also his view on the IATA tracking apps towards human well-being and the public health. And Ms. Sherin also added on the trust, confident, I think the safety. I think it's a very interesting, and the most important part what I enjoyed is when we discussed on the long and short term. I think that is the question which has taken us to the lot of discussion. And what I can understand from the participants, everybody's question is more on the passport vaccination. And also I think a lot of the question is aligned to that. And probably I think as collaboration is the key, as Ms. Sherin mentioned, even I was telling recent days in many of the sharing place, we all moving from the culture of competitiveness towards the culture of care and collaboration. I think the pandemic has taught us how to be collaborative, how to work together to fight against this global pandemic. I think through another collaboration, probably we will try to have some other discussion on the passport vaccination. Passport, I think that is a very big area. I think the organizing committee will look into it for the next organizing to keep this separate session for that. And very interesting, we also covered a bit on the skills and also the curriculum challenges and also industry, I think. And some of the areas which we could not able to cover is more on the shift in the event industry, MICE, especially hybrid events, because MICE has been totally shut down, become paralyzed, I can say, last 1 year. But because of the technology advancement and everything, it managed to survive to a certain level. So with this, I would like to thank the organizing committee, especially our friend Dr. Harim, for giving us an opportunity to share in this conference, a dialogue session. And my sincere thanks and gratitude to the speakers, Prof. Stan and Ms. Sherin, for extending the full support from the beginning of the discussion until now, and a lot of pre-meetings, and looking forward to work with you all. And also a sincere thanks. I think without the support of participants, nothing can happen. I think this conference itself is an example for MICE event, how to be an interactive with so much of people putting in one place, and within 2 days so many people across globally connected. I think this is a good example. With this, I would like to thank each and everybody, and stay safe, whether we have vaccine or not because of scarcity. But I think being more responsible, staying safe, taking care of ourselves, I think will have a big impact on overall growth of the economy. Thank you so much, everybody. God bless you all. Stay safe. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
So I would like to again highlight that the website will be open for some more period of time. So if you have more questions, you can interact with the panelists, or maybe we will also be checking the website. If there is any question, we'll be happy to address. Thank you. Thank you, one and all. We have done. Okay. Another sessions are starting, parallel sessions.